age before beauty. We'll start with you, Mr. Davidson. So, you know, as that one. You know, as a kid growing up, you know, it takes a while for you to even have a concept of, like, there's this thing called work, and, you know, my dad and my mom go to work in the morning, and then at some point you start realizing, like, what your dad does for a living. You know, thinking back, what are some of your earliest memories of your parents, and, you know, when did you realize that perhaps your father's job was a little unique?
Well, my father was a great rider, and he rode summer and winter in Wisconsin snow, rode a sidecar rig. It was a unique bike. It had a reverse transmission hand shifter. So he could rock it back and forth in the snow, which was unique, and a beautiful bike. So I remember him coming home from work on that beautiful Penhead, and I said, man, someday, and it was always in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Did he take you to work sometimes when?
Well, if I was a good boy, I would be able to go with my father to the Juneau Avenue factory, which at that point in time, I'm talking back in the 40s now, all of the motorcycles were produced in that factory, finished product. And so you could walk through the various floors and see parts coming down the line and going into the paint booth and finally assembled into a beautiful old motorcycle. But at that time it was just something exciting for a little guy, and I was thrilled to be there. So I was trying to be a good boy so he'd bring me back the next weekend. You know. It was great.
And those of you who were here at the beginning of that film saw a little bit of this, but so tell me about, you know, when did you start to ride, and what was your first motorcycle?
My first bike was a 48S model, which was a 125 single, a small two-stroke, something I loved. It was my first one, and I just immediately took it apart and painted it all different colors and the whole deal, because that was, being an artist designer, that was my passion, still is. And I love that little bike. Then I went to a K model in 51, 52. We came out with a side valve K model. And I rode a fair number of enduros. You know, this era I'm talking about was before the little dirt bikes and all of the available vehicles you could buy now for running off-road. But, you know, back in that time frame I'm describing, those models didn't exist. So riding that big K model in the woods and through river crossings and all the things that an enduro is about. You fall off a few times, that's part of it. But then I had a hell of a time picking that bike up because I was a little guy and that motorcycle was pretty heavy. But I did okay, got a couple trophies, and had a lot of fun. And that was that early 40s era.
So I want to get to some similar memories from you guys, but there's one of my favorite pictures of you is with your brother. This is John Davidson over here. and John had a K as well. There's a great picture of you guys, and I think you've got it on the wall of your office with your customized K models. Is that down?
In my office.
Yeah.
I have an office here. Yeah, I love that photo.
And those bikes were customized as well.
Yeah, we had an opportunity to use different finishes and wheels and seats and all the things that are happening. But that was in an era where customization was at its start. So they weren't. These bikes were beautiful. I wish I still had it, but I think they're beautiful in a way that made sense. The bikes were rideable and not extreme to the point where they had kind of strange proportions, which is a word I always like to use. I think any good-looking motorcycle has a great proportion between the engine, the wheels, the wheelbase, and how it sits and how it feels when you're on it. That's all very, very important. If you push a bike beyond that, it becomes more of a trophy that you put on the mantle.
I just want to introduce your lovely bride here, Nancy. Obviously, without whom you two wouldn't be here. Karen, tell me a little bit about, I remember when my older brother brought his motorcycle home. My mom wasn't very happy about that. When you guys started, was there ever a question in this family whether or not you'd ride?
No, it was more like, okay, kids, it's time to ride. So I was 9, and we had a little M50, was it a 66 or a 65? No, year. 63. That was a little manual clutch and turn type of bike. But it was a thrill, and we went out to a beautiful park west of the city, and trailered it out there, I think behind a motorhome or something. We were always, looking for off-road places. We did a lot of camping, a lot of exploring, because we love to travel with bikes and, go find those off-road destinations. But it started very early, so it was quite a thrill. And, just grinning. There's a picture of Bill on that little bike that we used for marketing.
I've seen some of the family, the home movie of one of you with Willie, and then Willie, you kind of drop off the back of the bike. Is that you, Bill?
It's you and your little baseball
Tell us
jacket.
a little bit about that.
Well, I'm sure all of you can remember the first time that you rode a motorcycle and you feel that freedom of taking control of the handlebars and the wind in your face. I remember that day vividly, that thrill of riding and controlling that machine was awesome. And the film footage we have of each of us, we're all grinning from ear to ear. And it's so cool, the footage we have, because it's truly family footage. You can see the family poodle, Peppy, running around, mom and dad standing around thinking, oh God, are they going to hit a tree, or what are they going to crash? But we all made it safely, and it was a neat day, and none of us have looked back. My brother Michael, I think, is in the back there.
Hi, Michael.
This is my brother-in-law, Scott. My daughter, Kara. And we're all avid riders. We love it, and it's been our lives, and that little M50 certainly inspired Michael, Karen, and I, and it's been awesome. It's been just great.
Willie was talking about riding enduros when he was a young man. You graduated at some point to an MX250, I think. Tell us a little bit about some of your slightly later, but not quite adult riding.
So, Dad, did some racing, some enduros and some drag racing, and we were always going to races, whether it be car or motorcycle. I remember watching the Top Fuel bikes run down at Union Grove, Joe Smith, Elmer Trett. It was a thrill, and watching some of the Top Fuel cars run down there. Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, going up there, watching the Indy cars run, some of the Can-Am cars, some of the naturally aspirated V8s, the Black Shadow cars. I still get goosebumps hearing those things go up the hill down the front straightaway at Elkhart Lake. We'd go to Hills Corners and watch the dirt track cars. And flat track was always an absolute thrill. If you've never been to a dirt track race or a flat track race, you guys need to do it. It is absolutely amazing to watch these, I call them gladiators, my heroes. Watch them maneuver these bikes along a mile dirt track is absolutely amazing. But I was inspired, and I started racing, and I raced Harley Davidson 250. It was actually, and not too many people know this, but we actually had a factory motocross team for a year. Rex Staten was one of our riders, and I have his bike. That's the bike that I raced. Amateur, obviously, he was a pro. I crashed a lot, I broke some bones, and right about the time I was starting to get pretty serious in school and realizing that, wow, there might be an opportunity at the company, I think I made the decision to stop racing because it was absorbing quite a bit of time and focus on school. But it's still a thrill. I still do a lot of dirt bike riding, and I love it.
So when this motor company was founded here in Milwaukee in 1903, it was one of the motor companies, motorcycle manufacturers in Milwaukee in 1903. By the time you guys were growing up, it was a world famous brand. What was it like, Karen, going to high school in Milwaukee as a Davidson? What'd you think of your family business?
Yeah, so, okay, I'll tie in a loop in the apparel, right?
Yeah.
So, Bill mentioned that we went to a lot of races when we were growing up, and I was always fascinated with the leathers that the guys wore, and also being around riders all the time, I'd be fascinated with, leathers and trim and all this stuff. So in high school, I was always clad in leathers. I had the biker jacket before it was iconic and popular, and I had the boots. So, it wasn't that the company was really outstanding and, big as we are now. It was just kind of that Davidson girl really likes leathers. So that stuff together goes way back to that era.
But now I'm trying to remember, because I think I saw some scrapbook stuff or something when we were rooting around the family home there. So when did you really begin to feel like maybe besides just wearing this stuff, I should start making some of it?
So I was in art and originally decided fine art, inspired by Willie, was kind of, a career or something that I was interested in. Then I decided after year one, I'm going to starve if I, keep making these crazy sculptures or something. I better get serious. So I decided to go into fashion design and pursue a career. So I went but I always gravitated to something that would allow three-dimensional translation, which is leather. And so I want to tell you about the sewing machines that I used to break in the fashion department because I had leathers. Oh, snakeskin, yeah. So when I was in, when I was in fashion school, it was all green fabrics and silks, and I show up with these python skins, and I'm going to design something out of python skins. I think the instructors were a little bit concerned. It turned out pretty cool.
There's something I've actually been meaning to ask you. So when we were building the museum, we were looking at a bunch of the kind of design gestures in there and trying to figure out how we were going to make those, what we call the focus galleries, feel like the environment was different. And because with Willie's inspiration with our design architect, Jim Bieber, you know, the building itself sort of feels muscular and industrial and echoes a factory. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be cool to have a recycled kind of factory floor in those spaces? And so luckily there was I think it was a knitting factory that was, they were redoing at the time, and so we were able to purchase, if you've been in the museum, when you walk there, like in the serial #1 gallery and stuff, you notice that nice wood floor. People are always asking me, is this the factory floor? And I say, well, from what I've heard, there is a Davidson connection with that floor, but it wasn't a factory. Is that true?
Yeah, I walked that floor quite a bit. That was from my first career. My first job in the industry was at a knitting company. So lo and behold, I found out after it had been procured for the museum that it was the knitting factory that I worked at. So yes, I was a young, aspiring person in the industry working at that company.
So if it's not too personal, just since we happen to have the whole family here, can you tell me a little bit about how you met your bride, if you would? Oh. You, yeah. No, Karen.
Well, first of all, I just want to say how proud I am and happy I am to have a bride for 61 years.
Wow. Woohoo!
Thank you, Nancy. We were neighbors and kind of hung out as a group, not too far from our home, which was in Wauwatosa at that point in time. And I courted her with a couple of things, a K-model solo bike, and then my dad's sidecar rig. And one time I got to tell a story about the sidecar rig.
She's shaking her head.
She lived on a one-way street. Oh. And so I decided to go over and pay her a visit. But I didn't want to go down the street the wrong way, so I decided to back up using reverse. So I got the bike going pretty fast in reverse. And I don't know if you understand how front forks work and how they don't work when you're going backwards, but they don't. And if you lose control of those bars, you create a front end wobble. And I managed to do that right in front of her house and tip the bike over.
That must have impressed her.
So her mother said, "Nancy, Bill's here." There's a bike out there with a wheel spinning on it. So that was kind of a bad deal that I created. But anyway.
Still married him. Good job.
So thanks for staying with me, Nana.
So I know, Willie, when you first began to kind of envision a career, you were not necessarily thinking about coming to the motor company. What about you, Bill? As you were growing up, what did you envision as a career? It certainly wasn't working with someone like me.
I like the family. We live, breathe, and love this company. And it really didn't hit me until probably late in high school that I had a really cool opportunity to maybe one day join a company. And I give a lot of credit to Mom and Dad because they always told us to pursue our own dreams. A lot of people kid, and I fell in love with motorcycles at an early age. And I joined the company in 1984. My first job was to develop a corporate demo ride program. 1984 was a very tough year for Harley-Davidson. We were losing money left and right. We had just introduced a new motor called the Evolution engine. We had lost a ton of market share to the Japanese. And so my job was to literally show people the differences we made in quality and dependability, reliability with our products. So I traveled around the US for 2 years with 12 bikes and was giving demo rides to people to show them the difference we made. If you remember back then, our advertising campaign was the new Harley's ride one. And so I was working under that campaign. And I've had many different positions with the company. I've run the Harley Owners Group. I was in product planning for 15 years. I was in sales and marketing for quite some time. Oversaw our entertainment marketing. Worked with people like Larry Mullen, the drummer from U2, Malcolm Forbes, Jay Leno, ZZ Top. It's been a thrill. And, you know, I do have to say, when the leadership approached me and asked me if I would be interested in running the museum, it took me about 0.5 seconds to say yes. This is a treasure chest. This is 115 years of history under one roof. This is the brand. And this is your museum. And that was something I was very excited about, to be able to share our rich legacy, our rich history with you guys, with our customers, with our dealers. Because it is unique. There isn't another motorcycle company that has this, and we do, and we're very lucky. And another reason we have it is because of you guys. So thanks for the support and the continued support.
Tell us a little bit about your transition from civilian life to Harley-Davidson.
Well, there was never a position that was here at the company that was in apparel development. It didn't exist. So I was in the industry. I was still working for the knitting company. Still in college, finishing up college in the industry. And I really was pursuing a job in the industry and looking at opportunities maybe in sportswear, sport active wear, etc. The company approached me to do a couple freelance designs for leather, and I did that. And then a inspirational, visionary person by the name of Clyde Fessler had been to Europe, and the Europe market, a high fashion market, a very prominent apparel market, was asking for Harley-Davidson apparel. Well, that started the whole idea of starting what we now know as Motor Clothes Genuine Merchandise. And Clyde approached me at a party one time and said, would you think about joining the company? I said, you know, you guys don't have a whole division to do this. It takes a lot of people to put this clothing together. He said, I think we could do this. And we talked, and there were other people interviewed. He said, you know, once you take this job, you're not going to be able to leave. Not with your name. And it's just been an absolute